Hi, welcome back to my studio practice where we're learning from Rousseau, and this is our uh, fifth session. I would like to show a little diagram of what I've been studying the last little while. So if we go across to the demo class, I have been looking at the dream, and what we've discovered is we have this sky, which is like a semicircle. Let's bring it out a little bit darker for you. With the nadir, or the lowest part, so the opposite apex, almost at the centre of the painting. And then what we discovered was we had some items breaking in to the void that's created there. Which we called the tree line. Now, if we look at that section there, that is really the background. And what we're noticing is that there is a midground and a foreground, and I wanted you to see that how can I put it? If we look at these two lines here, they're parallel. They're not really travelling towards each other, so they're going in parallel motion. And if we look at these two, these are going in contrary motion. So where this line comes down and then goes up, this line is going up and then down. They're working in the opposite or contrary. So they're in contrary motion. And of the two, this one, in my opinion, is slightly more interesting than the parallel. Let's take the sky line, the tree line and sky. If we have a midground which goes as a straight line, it's not very interesting. But having looked at Rousseau's painting, he has a chair which then dips away, comes up to some more plants, and comes back down again. The flowers that surround the chair create another layer of rhythm. So there is a little bit of parallel work, and there's a little bit of contrary work as well. What I'm keen to do is to create some space below the skyline and explore some almost parallel, because this is moving downwards, and some parallel and some contrary motion in our midground here. Before we go into the second midground here, which is the figure in the chair and some other flowers, and then some foreground material. So let's say that we have two middle grounds. We're going to do the rearmost of the two middle grounds. In this space, I counted 5 trees, or 5 principal trees in Rousseau's painting. And so what I'd like to do today is look at our version of it and see if we can explore where we can position these 5 trees effectively. So here we are. I know that we have got, I'm just going to sketch this in white. It's not part of today's work. Now we have got an area that features the chair with a reclining figure, which then dips away, comes up to some more interesting material, some more foliage and things, and sort of dissolves away here. So we've got a mixture of sort of parallel motion here, some contrary motion out here. So we've got a mix. This is the midground that we're interested in. This is the second midground, the foremost of the midground work. So this here is the area below the skyline, but above this line here, that's of interest to us today. And I'm going to try and position 5 trees. That's Pallet Camp over the demo class. There we go. And hopefully everyone can see. That's great. I can't use black because there won't be that much contrast. But I can use black with something in it. And so if I look at my collection of paints, I should have a nice indigo, which is a very blue-black anyway. Add it into my mix. If I can. And if not, I'll just use French ultramarine blue. So French ultramarine blue into my black mix. Let's go over to Palette Camp. Here we are. So French ultramarine blue in with my black and the dirt of everything else that's been working on over the last couple of days. So it's going to be a very, very dark blue. But I also want to pull in some white so that we can make a distinction. So we can make a distinction between the background and the 5 trees that we're trying to position in. So again, in the absence of a mixing knife, the ivory flat brushes will have to do. but to me are less than ideal. And so I'm going to pull in some white into notes. Make a fairly dark blue. Okay, so back to the demo class. If we divide this up into thirds, horizontally, 1, 2, 3. So we're looking for about here and about here to have a tall tree that respects the 4 points of interest, which are the intersection points of the 2/3 rule of thirds. So going this way, somewhere about here, and then respecting this and this and this point here and here as our 4 points of interest. So we should be able to incorporate those. It's a tricky decision knowing where to put them without damaging the work that was done before. There's going to be some kind of interference, and that's not dark enough. So perhaps if it splits up here, and is fairly broad, a tree, then we can afford a branch that comes out and straddles the sun and intersects some of that foliage. Okay, so I am happy with that's a thick tree, and I think that that may be my thickest tree. Again, similarly here, I want to have another tree. Intersecting the moon. I've decided that of the two features that are in the sky, the moon is of less interest to me than the setting sun. And so what I'll do is have a lesser branch here. That's okay. And perhaps even one coming up there. That's two. So there's my two principal trees. I've got three lesser trees to consider. And so what I'd like to do is maybe have one which goes right up here and stops the viewer's eye from going off the canvas board in this instance. and that's at the lowest point of my furthest back midground. 2 more to go. Well, I think perhaps something similar is needed on this side. So again, some kind of tree form. Intruding upon where the couch is going to be. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the 5th one is needed. I want to fatten that one up a little bit more. Make a little bit more interest out of it. And perhaps again there. Because this area in the sky here is less visually interesting than other parts of the sky. And so that's them plotted in. Now, another thing that I noticed by studying Rousseau's original dream is that the lighting doesn't seem to bear any kind of resemblance to what is going on in the sky. So, like in my own elastomorph paintings of that I completed in April, there is ubiquitous lighting, which means that the light is coming from any and possibly all directions if I will it. So I've noticed that in the lighting of the trees, Rousseau is not really concerned that the lighting respects direction. But what it does do is respect form. So I'll try and show what I mean in a moment once I've completed these little details, these little block-ins. So hopefully you can detect that it's a very blue-black area and not showing much contrast with the original black. But this might help. So when I go in with this, I'm mixing titanium white. So, and just noticed that I haven't been back to the class. I've put in 5 trees. But on this side, I'm going to have my light side. That's going to be my light. And it's a mixture of the French ultramarine blue, carbon black, and titanium white. So you can see that I have lit the tree on the left-hand side. And so I'm going to do the same again with this branch here. I'm going to light it on the left-hand side and down this side of the tree. I'm going to light it on the left hand side. There. But on these trees, I'm going to light them on the right hand side. On the branch and down the trunk. And this is given a rudimentary form to the shapes, these large trees that we've placed in. On the outside, on the right hand side of the tree, and on the branch. And you'll notice this fork here on this tree respects the intersection point there, and it comes down as far as the intersection point here, as does this one. It straddles the intersection point on the right hand side and then transfers over onto the on the right hand side of it over to the left hand side. And you can tell that today I am struggling. So do please put up with me not communicating brilliantly well. We have good days and bad. So what I'm trying to do now is go into the black again, so we can get just slightly lighter than the main black that was placed down before. So if we do that, bring a little touch of that. And so we have a light side, which is appearing blue, the blue-black that we made, and a much darker black, blue-black. And I want to find even more black than this. So I'm back to using my rigger brushes. I'm seeking out the black. And reinstating it on the opposite side from the side that I have lit up with the highlights. Same again down this branch here. Pull in the dark, opposite the light side. So what I want to do here, if I can get my mix right, I seem to be struggling to get the consistency right on my paint today. I'm trying to keep the mix rather lean. I'm just using water. So there's my light side there, and here the dark opposite it, opposite on this side. Trying to make it much darker, but only slightly more detectable than compared with the original black that we placed down. So these very darks are going on the left side of these trees. That could be even darker still. Very dark on this side. Even that seems to be flowing a lot better. Opposite the light side. And as I'm about to do the last one, the last tree, I am gauging whether or not I think that the dark is dark enough and the light is light enough. And I would argue that we could be even lighter on the light side. And so I'm going back in with more titanium. Into my light mix. And here we go. Very, very light this time. Switches down the left hand side of these. Down the branch. And down the trunk. Same again here. Down the trunk. Down the branch. So I haven't to reload the brush quite a lot because it's being dirtied in the journey by mixing into the wet paint. So these trees are actually filling out quite quickly. They're becoming quite chunky. And I can see that my style is now deviating quite a bit from Rousseau's. So the feel of the artwork is now quite different from Rousseau's. So, lit on opposing sides. What we've got now is a dry flat brush, and I want to blend a little bit. I want to take the edge of some of these lines and give a kind of suggestion that the tree is rounded. And even textured. So I should really clean off the brush a little. So that has taken some of the abruptness away from the white line. It seems a little bit too abrupt. It's lacking kind of subtlety. And some very little blending. There we go. And the opposite on this side. So just pulling the light material into the dark and changing the angle a little bit as we travel down the trunk. There we go. Still a little bit abrupt up there. And of course, the imperfections that you're inevitably going to introduce will just appear as texture on the tree. There we go. Change the angle a little bit. This is lower. The angle of the light will change. Now, an artist who was working at roughly the same time as Rousseau was an artist called Ferdinand Leger, and Leger's figures are very cylindrical, and the shading on those cylinders reminds me very, very much of the shading that Rousseau has on his trees and foliage. So that's it. I have added in some major trees. There's going to be some interlocking foliage, that's, some detailing that's going on. I may even knock these back once they're dry. I might knock them back a little bit further with some glazes to get the lightness of the trees to dull down and dampen down to match that of the background. So after the camera stops rolling, I am going to clean this up and get ready, do some more research as to how we can fill in the gaps between these 5 large trees. And what I have noticed is that Rousseau likes to paint in little surprises, little surprise characters like owls or monkeys or even lions, tigers. So there are things that we can put in to make our jungle a little bit more surprising and interesting for the viewer. So thank you for viewing this one and for spending your time with me. I hope that you found something that was of interest to you and at least inspires creativity wherever you happen to be. Thanks for watching. Bye.